A new Russia leak might actually be delivering some good news for the Trump administration. The Washington Post reporting that a former low-level campaign staffer, George Papadopoulos, had repeatedly tried to set up meetings between campaign and Russian officials, including a sit-down between Trump and Vladimir Putin. However, the report, which cites campaign emails that have been turned over to congressional committees, says that staffers' efforts were met with alarm by numerous campaign officials, including then-campaign chairman Paul Manafort, and ultimately rejected. On top of that, new reporting by Politico shows that the Obama administration was warned multiple times by national security officials that Russia was moving to disrupt the U.S. political system. Those warnings came as early as 2014. Guy, you wrote about this today, right? I want to get your take on it.
Yeah, so I think that when we're considering the Russia issue and the narrative about collusion, it's very important to follow the facts. That's one of the reasons why I've supported the special counsel investigation. That's why I was very tough on Team Trump when the Donald Jr. email chain came out, which I thought looked bad and contradicted a bunch of what they had said previously. This, on the other hand, is good news for the Trump campaign. It is countervailing evidence. It got far less attention than some of the other bombshells got. But this shows high-level people in the campaign repeatedly being offered opportunities to meet with Russian officials all the way up to Vladimir Putin. They said no. They said these are concerns that we have. There could be Logan Act violations involved here. We should talk to our allies in NATO before we do anything with the Russians. It looked like a responsible campaign, making sure that they're adhering to protocols. So this is not unto itself vindication for the entire story from the vantage point of Trump, but it is a data point that is helpful to their contention that there was no collusion.
Ebony?
I was going to toss it to the fellow counselor here, Whitney. Is it a little exculpatory-esque, right? To Guy's point, something that kind of can rebut some of the really damning narratives around the collusion presumption. And to Guy's point, I think you're absolutely right. At the very least, it kind of points this in another direction.
Yeah, no, as a criminal defense attorney, I loved reading this today and seeing that there was actual paper, documented or electronic form where they were doing the right thing. They were saying, you know, this is not only why it's a bad idea, but let's not let DT do this. Let's not let Donald Trump do this. Somebody make sure he doesn't. And it was well thought out, and it helps. I think that, again, it doesn't paint the full picture in terms of the entire investigation, and that's not done yet. But it's certainly a good point for Trump.
Sure.
Now, I want to ask you, Maria, of course, about the Obama administration knowing about Russians potentially being interested in interfering in our elections. Why wasn't something done? Do you have any take on that? Was it they just not considered a serious threat, or what do you think?
Well, we were getting warnings as early as 2014, which, if folks remember, is when Russia went into Ukraine. It was very clear they were trying to meddle in other countries' affairs, we should say. So we were getting warnings that their cyber activities were ramping up. We saw this in Eastern Europe. We saw this across Europe. And we knew they were trying to look at our election system. But we didn't have credible, specific warnings about how they were going to do it, right? We didn't know they were going to target the DNC, for example. We didn't know they were going to work with WikiLeaks to target John Podesta, right? So we didn't have a lot of specific information. We were concerned about it. We raised it with the Russians privately a number of times. We tried to reinforce our own cyber protections for the government. But this is a really tough problem. And I read that article thinking, I wonder today if the Trump administration is maybe learning some of the lessons and putting in place procedures so this can't happen again. I've heard from a number of people that are still in that because they don't consider the Russia investigation a serious issue, that they're not doing maybe all they should be to prevent it from happening
Marie,
again.
I don't know. From where I'm sitting, it sounds a little weak that they didn't know specifically.
Well, it's true.
I understand it's a fact, but you have to know the nitty-gritty and the absolute specifics to know that any presumption of involvement, or the possibility, rather, of involvement is still a serious problem?
No, you're right. And we knew it was a serious problem, and we were taking steps. I mean, in the cyber world, a lot of these steps you don't see publicly, right? We were taking steps. We knew in 2014 they were doing things in Ukraine. They were doing things in Crimea. We were doing things behind the scenes, but it is difficult when you don't have specific threat information.
Right, but
so this idea today that some people are saying the Obama administration should have been able to stop this, that's not fair, I don't think.
Well, now we have people on the left speaking passionately about a guy, which almost makes it look like perhaps they became interested because now it's politically advantageous for them to be interested.
Right.
So it's more of a political issue and about their party rather than country, which, quite frankly, always makes me sick. So I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, this is a president and an administration that was very weak vis-a-vis Russia throughout their entire time on office. Even before the president took office in 2008, he was weak on the invasion of Georgia. He mocked Mitt Romney and ridiculed him ruthlessly in 2012 for being right about Vladimir Putin. He was invested in the reset button. He was invested in the Iran deal, which he needed Russia's help on. So there were quoted sources within the Politico piece saying maybe they knew about stuff, maybe they did a few things, but their actions were not nearly robust enough. They were too lackadaisical about it, and part of it may have been they decided that it was within their interests to soft pedal with the Russians.
As someone that was in the administration and who did actually have to work with Russia at times, I would very strongly disagree with the notion that we didn't take this seriously because we somehow wanted better relations with Russia. And I will take very, very strong exception with that as someone who lived through it. And for everyone who's concerned about Russia, we now have a president who's even softer on them, who won't criticize them over anything. So I can debate the Obama administration until my face turns blue.
Was your boss wrong about Russia in 2012 and what he said to Mitt Romney? Wasn't he wrong about that?
I honestly think that 2016 is very different than 2012. And yes, Russia was a
no, Maria.
I'm sorry. I don't think he was wrong. Look, would we have phrased it differently? Maybe. Okay, I will grant you.
So Russia,
I will grant you that.
Not so bad in 2012, super bad in 2016.
In 2012, Russia was not our top geopolitical foe, which is what Mitt Romney said. I don't think it was. 4 years later, they've done a bunch of really aggressive things. They've pushed out into Eastern Europe. They weren't in Ukraine. They weren't in Crimea.
They were in Georgia.
Which happened under George W. Bush. That's not Barack Obama's fault.
No, but he was very weak in not really condemning it, right? So
he wasn't president when it happened.
It's almost as if this issue is too complicated to completely flesh out in one block. Up next, the Justice Department is demanding data from a major Trump resistance website, and it's sparking a big legal showdown. Don't go away.